You guys, Erin here, back with another moon update for you. So what we've got coming up just around the corner here is a new moon, which is actually a super moon taking place on Saturday, January 21st. This peaks at 12:52 p.m. Pacific time. And this new moon is in the sign of Aquarius, 1 degree Aquarius. Anything that comes through at 1 degree, it's like the purest, most powerful form of that particular zodiacal influence. Okay. And not only that, but this new moon is pretty close to Pluto. In my opinion, this new moon is maybe the most important time to manifest new beginnings, to manifest growth of the entire year of 2023. As with any new moon, this is a time to manifest growth that is related to the sign of Aquarius. But something to consider here, we're going into the age of Aquarius, okay? So this is a very, very important new moon, especially, well, very much in my opinion. So in this recording, what I'm going to do is I'm going to break down all the details of this sign of Aquarius for you, so you know what you're working with here. And I will also pull up the chart and show you some prominent other astrological forces that we'll be receiving at the time of this new moon. And then I'm also going to be talking about certain parts of the body that are ruled by the sign of Aquarius, because these parts of our body become more sensitive when the moon transits through the sign of Aquarius. And it's a good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our body during this new moon transit. I will also be talking about some herbs that can kind of support these parts of our body while the moon transits through the sign of Aquarius. And I'm also going to be talking about certain gemstones that really resonate well with the sign of Aquarius and how to use these gemstones for this new moon transit. And for the people who are a little more advanced, I'm also going to mention some brief little sort of hints on how to discover which area of your life this specifically manifests for you. Of course, we all experience this new moon at 1 degree Aquarius, but of course, it's going to be very unique to each and every one of us. Okay, so for starters, this sign of Aquarius, Aquarius is what we call the fixed air sign. When I say fixed, what I'm talking about is this energy likes to do things with consistency, persistency, in a steadfast way. It doesn't want to be jumping all over the place. It is in the element of air, which air has so much to do with intellect and information in astrology. In fact, the sign of Aquarius is said to be like the genius of the zodiac, the one who comes up with genius ideas out of nowhere. It's a very progressive energy, almost futuristic energy. In fact, it's ruled by Uranus, okay, Uranus and Saturn. But that Uranus influence has so much to do with the sign of Aquarius, obviously, but not only that, but what's going on in the world right now. We've been receiving a ton of very Uranus sort of energy. And let me just break this down for you. So Uranus influences technology. It influences this revolutionary type of energy. In fact, Uranus is quite rebellious and can literally create things like riots on the streets. But the ultimate goal of Uranus is freedom. It wants to be kind of against status quo. It also is even a little anti-establishment. That's one of my favorite things about this sign of Aquarius, is that it is so unique and that it can be a little rebellious and, the influence of anti-establishment. That's what I appreciate about this energy. But that's also what we are receiving right now as we're going into this age of Aquarius. But the sign of Aquarius in and of itself, coming from this Uranus energy, has so much to do basically with being an individual. It's this individualistic energy. Influences this energy of everybody being their incredibly own unique individual person, coming up with new styles, inventions, that sort of thing, getting very creative with their vessel. But it's also the sign of humanitarianism. Okay. And again, a lot of this is coming from Uranus's influence. So this humanitarianism has a lot to do with kind of networking with other people to help make the hopes and wishes come into fruition. It's this sign of the people for the people rather than government for the people, that sort of thing, or people for the government. It's this, again, this sign that's a little rebellious. Okay, so, but still, again, individualism, but doing things in teams. It's also this sign of detachment. Aquarius season really is, it's like the coldest energy. It has a lot to do with the coldest time of the year and can have this tendency to detach based on that. This also comes from that Saturnian influence, as I mentioned. This sign is ruled by Uranus and Saturn. And that Saturnian influence can have a lot to do with being cold and detached. But for the purpose of understanding things from an intellectual perspective, a higher level of truth. In fact, Aquarius is the water bearer. Okay. A lot of people tend to think that Aquarius is a water sign because of that, but it's not. It is an air sign. But what the water bearer does is it has the water. Now, in astrology, water is associated with emotions. Okay. So the water bearer detaches the emotions from the water, turns the water into information, pure information, then pours the water out. And this water is always going to be distributed evenly for all of humanity, okay, as it's being distributed as information. This is why we are being flooded with information, especially through the form of technology. That's that Uranus influence. We're being bombarded and flooded with information through technology based on this Aquarius energy. But that energy of detaching the emotions from the water has so much to do with this Aquarius energy, detaching from emotions, but to understand things from a higher level of truth. Like, what is the lesson in this situation rather than getting wrapped up in the emotions? Okay, that's very much an Aquarian energy. And again, a lot of that comes from that Saturnian influence and the blend of that Uranus energy as well. The motto for the sign of Aquarius is I know, because it is the sign of knowing. It's the sign, again, it's this progressive sort of futuristic energy that's a little bit ahead of the game, and does well with things like projecting forward in revolutionary changes. Okay, so how do you want to grow in these ways? This is a time to write down how you want to grow in the ways of an Aquarius. Okay, so, and not only that, but we do all, of course, we all experience this new moon as a collective. Everybody will be experiencing the new moon at 1 degree Aquarius. But it's also incredibly unique to each and every one of us. And so much of this depends on where the sign of Aquarius comes through your own personal natal chart. Now, you will need to know approximately what time you were born and able to be able to figure this out. But let me go ahead and pull up the chart and show you how to try and figure this out in your own chart, what area of your life this specifically is coming through for you. Okay, so for starters, for those of you who are new to my recordings, what I work with is geocentric Western astrology. With that said, what we're looking at here is basically a snapshot of the tropical zodiac at the time of this new moon. We put Earth right here in the middle of this thing. Now, these symbols right here, which are technically called glyphs, are the glyphs for the celestial bodies. Like this right here is Pluto. Here's the moon. Here's the sun. Here's Venus. Here's Saturn. Here's Neptune. And when we go in the wheel a little way, these are the symbols for the zodiac signs that all these things will be beaming through onto Earth at the time of this new moon. Now, if you know approximately what your birth time is, you're going to need to know your birth date, your birth time, and birth location. And just go to any search engine on the internet and look up how to calculate your natal chart for free. You'll find a ton of websites that will do this for you. Okay, now when you do that, you'll pull up something that looks similar to this. Depending on what website you're using or software you're using, it's going to look a little different, but it will be a circle with all these little things that look like a slice of pie. Okay, you will have a natal chart that has these little slices of pie in it. And what you're going to want to do is you're going to want to look for this right here is the symbol or a glyph that is for the sign of Aquarius. You can see them right here too. Okay, it's these little squiggly lines. In fact, that glyph is to represent the electrical energy that comes through with this. It's like radio waves. That's that water bearer pouring out the water, but it's information. Okay, it's like kind of a little spasmodic energy that also is coming from that Uranus influence. But look to see which slice of pie that Aquarius symbol is coming through. Then you're going to know what area of your life this sign of Aquarius specifically rules for you. You will be able to see what area of your life this new moon comes through. What you will want to see is what is the energy of that particular slice of pie. These are called the houses. And by the way, again, this is for people who are a little more advanced. Personally, for these moon transits, I like working with a whole sign house system. Of course, I love Placidus as well. It really just kind of depends on what I'm doing. But if you are using a Placidus house system, then it'll look like this. Again, it'll look very similar to this, but you're going to need to see exactly where 1 degree Aquarius comes through. Okay, now, just very, very briefly, I did this in my last recording, and I know a lot of people really, really enjoyed it. I did get some feedback on that. So very, very quickly, I'm going to go give you one keyword for each one of these houses so you can understand which house, which area of your life this new moon comes through. So if it comes through this first house, and by the way, this is always and forever this first house. Doesn't matter what house system you're using, doesn't matter whose chart you're looking at, doesn't matter what software you're using. This is always going to be the first house, which is the house of self. Okay, if you're an Aquarius rising, this is coming through your first house. All right, that's the first house is the house of self. Okay, if this is coming through, if you see Aquarius, the symbol for Aquarius coming through your first house, this is a very, very important time for you to manifest new beginnings that have to do with yourself. Okay, second house, let's just call it this, the house of money. The third house, house of communication. The fourth house, house of home. Fifth house, house of children and creativity. Sixth house, house of health and being of service. Seventh house is the house of relationships. Eighth house is the house of transformation. Ninth house is the house of higher learning. 10th house is the house of career. 11th house is the house of associates and people who you are networking with. And the 12th house is the house of karma. Okay, now again, there's a lot more to this, but again, I just said I'd give you some little clues. And here's the thing, if you get a reading with me, you are provided with the option to get a free video recording that you can download and keep forever. So you can always go back for any new moon, any full moon, any eclipse, anything that's prominent and astrological, and you want to see which area of your life it's coming through for you, you can go back to that recording and figure that stuff out for yourself. That's one of my favorite things, is teaching people how to figure this stuff out for themselves. Okay, so back to what we're looking at. This is just a chart for this new moon. Okay, based on my location, we don't need to pay attention to the houses here. This is again just based on my location. What we're going to be looking at here, we're going to start with the sun and the moon. This right here is the symbol for the sun. This right here is a symbol for the moon. This right here again is a symbol for Aquarius, and this right here is to represent 1 degree Aquarius. Okay, that's what I'm talking about. Anything that's at 1 degree, it's incredibly powerful. It's the very purest form of that sign of Aquarius. Now, anytime we have a new moon, it means the sun and the moon are in the same spot. They are both at 1 degree Aquarius. That's what makes a new moon happen. Every single month, the sun and the moon meet up in the same degree in the same sign of the zodiac. Okay, and this one is for that sign of Aquarius. This is why, okay, the moon in Western astrology, the moon is the mother, the sun is the father. They come together every month to create this energetic baby. Okay, they're basically making a baby that will grow over the next 6 months. And that's why this is a time for new beginnings. That's why this is a time to manifest this growth. Okay, so let's see here. Another point that I wanted to make and why this is such a powerful new moon is because the sun and the moon are very close to Pluto. This right here is Pluto. Now, Pluto is actually in the sign of Capricorn, which is 1 sign away from Aquarius. That doesn't mean they're not conjunct. Anytime any 2 celestial bodies are close together, it's called a conjunction. Okay, and when they are conjunct or in this conjunction, they blend together and want to work as one. And it doesn't matter that they're in different zodiac signs. They're about 3 degrees away from each other. So this is Pluto. What Pluto influences is powerful transformation. Pluto is the influencer of power. He can be very, very destructive, but on the same token, that destruction is to create a more powerful new beginning. Okay, now this is again in part why I feel like this is such the fact that this is a super moon, the fact that it's at 1 degree Aquarius, and the fact that it's conjunct Pluto. This is very, very powerful. Now, since we're on Pluto, I'm just going to talk about what Pluto's been doing very briefly here. So Pluto's a major key player throughout the year of 2023. And the reason for that is because he's going to be dancing back and forth between Capricorn and Aquarius. Pluto has been going to the sign of Capricorn for a long time. I think I can't remember off the top of my head right now, but it's something along the lines of 18 years. And Pluto is finally moving out of Capricorn and moving into Aquarius, but he's going to retrograde back into Capricorn, then move forward again. And when anything does that, especially something as powerful as Pluto, when anything is kind of dancing back and forth between two zodiac signs, it can have a tendency to be even more powerful. And here we are talking about Pluto, who's already super powerful. Going through the sign of Capricorn, Capricorn actually rules authoritarian establishment. Capricorn actually rules things like government. Capricorn rules the structure of our civilization. Capricorn rules traditions. And here Pluto has been going through that sign of Capricorn, creating major destruction to authoritarian establishments, to the structure of our civilization, and to things like traditions. I mean, so many people are not celebrating, we'll just call them holidays, the way that they used to. That's a lot of that has to do with Pluto going through Capricorn. Now, Pluto is going to, I could go so deep here. Pluto's going to get into the anaretic degree of Capricorn and be very, very prominent, but then we'll peek into Aquarius, kind of showing his head into the sign of Aquarius, saying, hey, I'm here to cause a little destruction in this sign of Aquarius, but the real purpose is to empower this sign of Aquarius. So that is one very important thing that is going on. Now, I'm also going to mention here, we have Venus and we have Saturn also going through Aquarius. Now, Saturn and Venus can actually get along very, very well because Saturn brings restrictions. He calcifies things. He brings minerals. He brings anything that will bring some sort of an obstruction or create a blockage of sorts. Really, Saturn's ultimate goal is to teach us hardcore responsibilities. Saturn he's the rule maker, okay? And he has been bringing some rules into this sign of Aquarius really since December of 2020. But what's going on here is Venus has come up and she's softening Saturn a little. Venus is bringing a little bit of a feminine, softer side to this kind of strict Saturnian energy. And again, this is also going through the sign of Aquarius. Now, for a lot of people, of course, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but I do happen to know that a lot of my clientele has been going through some very turbulent relationship stuff. This energy right here between Venus and Saturn being conjunct going to the sign of Aquarius. Now, this does not necessarily only apply to romantic relationships. This could be applied to any kind of relationship. They can be, of course, emotionally turbulent when you're going through a situation in a relationship. This Aquarius energy, especially since we've got the sun and the moon and Venus and Saturn all through the sign of Aquarius, this is like the perfect opportunity to, again, detach from the emotions to understand things from an intellectual perspective, from that higher level of truth. Where is the lesson here? What do we need to learn here? Because that's what Saturn is doing. Okay, so hopefully that made enough sense to everybody. Now, let's also talk about Mars for a minute here, because Mars is very, Mars has been in Gemini for about 7 months, which is basically unheard of. Like Mars usually goes through a zodiac sign in anywhere between 1 and 3 months. This has been a long time Mars has been going through Gemini, and Mars gets frustrated when in Gemini. Now, don't get me wrong, if you've got Mars in Gemini in your natal chart, that doesn't mean that you're walking around frustrated. In the natal chart, that can actually create a very excitable energy, a very sort of almost ready to jump at any time kind of energy, because the sign of Gemini is very active. It's very vibrant. Okay, and Mars brings a physical drive. If we look at the glyph of Mars, he wants to penetrate. He wants to move forward. He really does rule our physical drive. He's what makes us go do what we got to do. He's masculine. He's dominant. He's hot. In the sign of Gemini, the sign of duality, Gemini is the twins. I mean, even just the glyph, it's to represent the twins. Mars doesn't know which direction to go in. He's in the sign of duality, so he gets a little frustrated, okay? In fact, Gemini is ruled by Mercury, and Mercury and Mars really don't get along so well at all. So Mars has been struggling here. But Mars is no longer in retrograde. Mars is moving forward here. Mars is going to move into Cancer in March. In fact, we're going to have a lot of big shifts in March. So stay tuned for that. For the next recording, we'll be talking about what's going on in March. A lot of big differences going on here. But however, since Mars and almost everything else is moving forward, this can be a time, as long as we're not getting distracted, because so many fascinating things are going on around us, as long as we're staying on track and moving forward with that one particular goal that we're trying to go after, this can actually be good for that. And especially if your goal involves communication, or maybe potentially being an author of sorts, this can actually really support that too, as Gemini is the sign of communication. Now, let's talk about Uranus here. Okay, Uranus, again, very important key player here. This is one of really Aquarius's main ruler, okay? And Uranus is in retrograde at the time of this new moon. However, Uranus starts to, well, it's going to go direct. It's going to go stationary the day after this new moon, which when Uranus, well, when anything has been in retrograde and then all of a sudden it stops and it's going to be stationary, they can get a little excited. They can get a little crazy when anything does that, but especially Uranus. Uranus can do this, where it's flipping up all upside down and acting a little crazy. So that can feel a little abrupt, especially for people who are very sensitive, and especially if you've got something going on in your chart where Uranus is right on top of your, say, your natal sun or something like that. It can feel very like, whoa, a big deal. But as soon as that stationary is, as soon as Uranus starts to move forward again, which is really, things are going to start really moving forward towards the end of January, going into February, going into March. There's a lot of forward motion here to support your goals, to support moving forward, to support communication skills, to support relationship issues, a lot of stuff to move forward with that, especially, well, I'm not even going to say anymore because it really, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but especially this can be very good for certain people who have been feeling sort of like held back from going after what they want to. I know a lot of people, just because a lot of the celestial energies that we've been receiving have kind of been pulling back, like, okay, I've got this goal, I'm going after this, and then all of a sudden there's a blockage or there's something that pulls you back. A lot of people have been experiencing that based on celestial energies that we've been receiving. Those things are all really starting to project forward. Okay, I hope that made sense. Now, and the North Node still going through Taurus. This is still, this Uranus, I've talked so much about this because, I just don't want to make these videos too long. But Uranus is, I just mentioned, Uranus is that very spasmodic sort of, Uranus is rebellious. Uranus rules technology. It's very zappy. And we've been just receiving this like really heavy dose of that Uranus energy because it's been so close to the North Node. The North Node is where celestial energy comes in. Not only that, but Uranus does not like to be in the sign of Taurus. We've talked a lot about this. Taurus rules money. We saw what happened with money and inflation and finances and all sorts of crazy things that went on in 2022. A lot of that had to do with this Uranus going through Taurus conjunct the North Node, because the North Node is where celestial energy comes in. But these guys are finally starting to separate. They're still fairly close at the time of this this new moon, but they are starting to separate. So some of that abruptness, some of that sort of shocking energy that revolved around money, and also farmlands, and also even any type of material possessions, a lot of very strange things going on in the area that kind of rules over those things, that should start to subside a little bit. Okay, a little bit of kind of making sense of things from the financial end of things. Okay, so I hope that makes sense. I'm just going to leave that there because, again, so much of this really depends on your own natal chart and how this is impacting you. Okay, now I will briefly touch on Chiron going through Aries. Chiron, to me, I'm just going to leave this here. Aries is the sign of self. Chiron is the wounded healer, and this is such an opportunistic time to really work on healing ourself. Okay. Now, Jupiter is also going through Aries. I like this a lot. Jupiter is the great benefic. Jupiter brings abundance, brings wisdom, can make things a bigger deal. And Aries being the sign of self. Aries also being, well, it's the cardinal fire sign. It's a little bit of a, I shouldn't say a little bit, it's a lot of being a warrior coming through the sign of Aries. Aries can be aggressive. And Jupiter, it kind of can bring, make that warrior a bigger deal. Again, so much of this depends on your own natal chart, but it can bring this of fire to the table here. And not only that, but fire is the number one important element in the process of transformation. So this can bring some heat. But I will say this, Jupiter has a very big influence on our liver. And I do feel like a lot of people's livers could be like kind of frustrated or inflamed based on this transit. We've got Neptune going through Pisces. I will leave this here. This is a very, very spiritual transit. This Neptune rules mysticism and spirituality and also rules the sign of Pisces. So all together here, a lot of people having spiritual awakenings. This is a slow transit that's going to be going on for at least another 3 years or so. But it can also create delusions. A lot of people walking around deluded, like saying things that don't make sense based on some information that they got off of something that probably came from a charlatan, that sort of thing. It's a really, really good idea to make sure that you are paying attention to where you're getting your information from based on not just Neptune going through Pisces, but so many other things. People are easily manipulated right now. Okay. Mercury going through Capricorn. Mercury rules our conscious awareness. Mercury has so much to do with our communication skills. And going through Capricorn, he wants to be a little more practical. He wants to make sense of things. He wants to be a little ambitious, definitely ambitious, but also can slow things down. In fact, I personally kind of like this right here because there's a lot of activity going on, a lot of ungrounded activity. We've got all this Aquarius energy, which is an air, which is sort of buzzy and going on up here. We've got Mars in Gemini, which Gemini is also an air sign where things are just kind of buzzy and it's about being up in the head. And it's wonderful energy, but it's not grounded. And then we've got Uranus going through Taurus, which basically takes the grounded energy out of the sign of Taurus. We've got this Aries energy, which is fiery. We've got this Piscean, wishy-washy spiritual energy. Basically, what we're lacking here is grounded stability. And that Mercury going through Capricorn does provide some of that. Capricorn is a stable, grounded, cardinal earth sign. And Mercury, again, rules what's going on in our mind. Okay, so we can slow things down there and ground us out a little bit. The South Node going through Scorpio. The South Node is where celestial energy goes out. The sign of Scorpio actually rules the excretory system and loves to take things out in this sign, loves to flush it out. This is and this goes on all the way till midpoint of July of this year. This is such a good time for flushing toxicity out of our life, whether that be through physical cleanses, flushing out. Maybe you've been taking food in or certain things that are toxic to your body over the past few years or whatever. This is a time to flush that out. This is also a time to be flushing out, say, toxic relationships in your life. And of course, again, this depends on your own natal chart, but this is a really good time to be flushing things out until the midpoint of May of 2023. Okay, so I will leave that there. I think I talked about the things that seem most important. The next thing I'm going to mention is these body parts. So Aquarius really does rule the lower half of the legs, like the calves and the ankles. Okay. In fact, a lot of people who have, say, a challenged sun in the sign of Aquarius can kind of get stagnation in that area of the body, swollen ankles, swollen calves, that sort of thing. Aquarius also has a very, very big influence on the quality of our blood, things like circulation, things like bringing that stagnant energy up from the lower half of the body or the ankles up into the head. Sometimes, somebody's got a really well aspected sun in Aquarius, they can have really good circulation, but if they've got a really challenged sun, they can have very poor circulation. And we can all kind of be receiving this type of energy when the moon is transiting through the sign of Aquarius, especially because it's the sun and the moon and Venus and Saturn all going through Aquarius. And then also Aquarius is said to rule the electrical body, like the toroidal field that is constantly going around us. That's that electrical Uranus energy. Again, Uranus rules Aquarius, and this is sort of a zappy energy, sort of spasmodic energy. So it is a really good idea to pay a little extra attention to these parts of our body during this new moon transit, and some herbs to kind of help us support that. For starters, something called prickly ash can be really good for, it's like an anti-spasmatic. People who are going through an Aquarius syndrome will have these weird little episodes of a spasm in their body. Well, prickly ash can be really good for that. And then another thing to help with that like sort of electric energy is something that will ground you out. Minerals, okay? Minerals are what will ground electricity. And nettles are filled with minerals, even just like a nettle tea, depending on, what. See, the thing is, I'm not a doctor and I don't claim to be a doctor. And so much of this depends on your own natal chart. I'm going off of stuff that I have learned from my wonderful teachers over the years and stuff that I've experienced for myself and really, really benefited from. And I really do try to stick with herbs that are kind of good for everybody. But overall, the mineral condensed herbs can be a good idea when the moon is transiting through the sign of Aquarius. Now, also rosemary can be really good for equalizing and even kind of supporting the circulation, getting that blood flow up from the lower part of the legs and bringing it up into the head. And then also ginkgo biloba is really good for bringing oxygen to the brain. People who have a little, challenged Aquarius energy in their natal chart sometimes need like a window constantly open. They need the oxygen coming in. There can be a challenged intake of oxygen with this Aquarius energy. And so ginkgo biloba can be really good support for that. Okay, and then also gemstones that really resonate well with this sign of Aquarius. The dedicated zodiacal birthstone for Aquarius is amethyst. There's a beautiful piece of amethyst right here. Amethyst, all the stones I'm going to mention here today are pretty much, I would say, safe for everybody to use. As I mentioned in all my videos, not every stone is good for every vessel. Not every stone is good for every body to be wearing on their body, but the ones I mentioned here are pretty much good for everybody. And I would definitely say that about amethyst, unless you're somebody who's super, super sensitive to like picking up on signals, okay, picking up and in the mind, not necessarily in the gut or in the heart, but rather up in the mind, picking up on signals. Amethyst might give you a little overdose of that, but it's such a beautiful stone. And what I love about amethyst is that it's not only an amplifier, because the clear stones will amplify the energies, okay? But it's because it's actually got a little tone to it. In fact, the darker the purple of the amethyst is, the more protective it's going to be. But even just this light piece of amethyst provides a little protection here from unwanted energies. Okay, and then also something called hematite. This is a piece of raw hematite. Hematite can be really good for enhancing your own personal magnetism against or amongst many, many other things. There's so many benefits that can come from this stuff, but this really does resonate very, very well with the sign of Aquarius. And then also I thought I would mention amber. That's why I put this necklace on today. Amber can be really, it's totally an Aquarius stone, okay? It really resonates with the sign of Aquarius, but it also can enhance things like willpower and even self-confidence. And again, so many other things. But these are the three stones that I will be working with at the time of this new moon. I always take the stones that resonate well with that sign that the moon is transiting through. I write in my journal, when the hours leading up to the new moon, I write down the growth that I want to experience that's related to the sign the moon is transiting through. And of course, I apply it to the house that it's coming through in my own natal chart. And I take somewhere, so it's usually 3 stones, and I put the stones that resonate well with the sign of Aquarius on top of my journal. Again, not every stone is good for everybody. Of course, I am experienced, and so I understand that there's which stones are not going to be good for my body. And those ones very specifically, I put on top of my journal, so I'm not putting them on my body. Instead, what I'm doing is I'm making the connection between the celestial energies and the words that I have written in my journal. I'm bringing a stronger connection in between these, these energies. Okay. So that's what I have had the greatest results with. Again, this is stuff I've learned from my teachers. And so I like to share it with you guys. I know I've had so many clients talk about I have so many return clients that because they see what happens when we work with this moon magic. Okay, now obviously not everybody has these types of stones. I will leave a full extensive list of like 20 or 30 stones that are very much dedicated to the sign of Aquarius. I think I covered everything I wanted to. If you would like to schedule an astrology reading, please visit erinwageastrology.com. You can schedule straight through my website. If you're on a phone or a tablet, look for 3 bars or 3 little lines at the top of the website. That's a menu bar. And if you click there, it'll say book online, and then it is a very easy process from there. Okay, you guys, I do hope to hear from some of you. And until next time, namaste to all of you.